My name's Morgana. Let's just say my name's Morgana, okay? Because, this is my third attempt making this video. I'm not really prone to making videos. I don't know how to sound enthusiastic at all. I'd like to sound as enthusiastic as possible so people are just kind of willing to watch or whatever. But, I wanted to tell you a story about, something related to me. Someone related to me. My great uncle, or actually, I'm sorry, I don't really know what they would be. But they were the brother of my great-great-grandfather who founded a company with them called Waldners Incorporated. They made like furniture. Essentially what they did, they were very similar to, how would I put it? Like very similar to Staples back in the 40s. And they found this together. They were both Jewish. I think my great-grandfather was a World War II veteran, liberated a few camps in Germany and whatnot. He was a very good person. Like, I've only heard good things about him. And, maybe there were bad things. Maybe there were subtle things that were bad about him. But I really just wanted to discuss what's been passed down to me and what I've found through research. So, a little bit about myself. I'm a business major at a school. I don't really want to disclose where, but I business major, really enjoy my job and whatnot. Really passionate about family history and dynamics. I really love history. Autistic, pretty openly. I really talk about it. I run a club here. But something's been bugging me lately, and I kind of wanted to discuss it because I found it really interesting. And that's this case with Waldners. Waldners furniture. If you don't know what Waldners is, it's fine. It's all good. They're probably not as relevant as they used to be, but they were essentially something along the lines of Staples. So they would sell like office furniture and office goods and whatnot. And they were pretty big at the time. So I want to tell you about how they started off. So my great-grandfather and his brother were both very poor men. So my great-grandfather's name was Perry Waldner, and his brother was Jerry Waldner. Now, they were Jewish Americans, and they were very poor. So one of the things they did as kids was they would go onto the streets and try to sell pens to people. And, they would sell pens to people who would need it. It was kind of like, like the old, what's the name of the movie? Wolf of Wall Street type of thing, sell me this pen, So they would go and do that. Well, eventually, World War II, 1939, that's when they founded their company, Waldners Incorporated. And eventually the war hit. There was a whole, war in Germany. And, it didn't get to America until they bombed Pearl Harbor. Obviously, as all of us know, December 7th, biggest terrorist attack in that part of history up until 9/11 in American history. In case nobody knew that, but 1941, my great-grandfather and his brother were Americans, and they were Jewish. I'm not Jewish. I'm not technically related to my great-grandfather. He's my step-great-grandfather, but we'll get there. My great-grandfather served in the war. He was a captain in D-Day. I don't know about I'm not too sure. I'm not too familiar with what my great-grandfather's brother was doing at this hour. But I will say this. My great-grandfather was a captain in D-Day. He was stationed in England for a while, and then he went as a captain to Normandy and stormed the beaches. Then he liberated 3 different camps. I actually have some pictures, but they're not, I don't know where they are. I think they're somewhere in my parents' house. I don't live with them, obviously, so you can probably tell. So essentially, he liberated 3 camps, came back to America, and, still struggling financially. So he worked his way up. And, he worked his way up, made this company. It was a huge company at the time. It was $1 million net worth, millions of dollars, I should say. Still is. It's not doing too bad, I guess. I mean, it's doing worse than it used to, obviously, because of the situation. Actually, it might even be doing better than it used to. I'm not really sure. There's a whole inflation thing going on, obviously. So then, my father and my great grandfather and my brother, they formed this company. My great grandfather got married to my great grandmother, who is biologically related to me. My great grandmother had one daughter. That was my grandmother, obviously. And they didn't get along very well. My grandmother, little family history for you. She had to give up her baby for adoption when she was a kid. It was the time period, it was very difficult at the time, and it still is, I know. She had to give up her baby, and my great grandmother resented my grandmother at the time, treated her horribly, and my grandmother then passed it on to my mom. But even my mom told me great things about my great grandfather, not so much my grandmother. And not so much my great-grandmother, but my great-grandfather. That she told me about how great of a person he was. And I really can't put emphasis on that enough. Like, everyone on Long Island knew who this guy was. Everyone, this is why it doesn't sit well with me. Everything I've been told about my great-grandfather, Perry, everything, he was just such a great man. And that's kind of why I wanted to make this video, because I wanted to discuss what happened after they founded the company. So they went into business together. My great-grandfather focused solely on retail of products, mostly, very similar to what Staples did. So they'd sell like pens and stuff, paper, more often, obviously more than just pens now. They were selling like office supplies that people at the time really they had no like big companies in that area that were selling those type of office supplies. And my great-grandfather was the one selling those, and my great-grandfather's brother was selling, like, office furniture, I guess, which, Staples doesn't really do, so there was a bigger market for that. And I don't even think Staples was really doing that until the 70s. So my great-grandfather's brother became more egocentric as time went on. And eventually my great-grandfather, he was very, very moral. We call this like corporate social responsibility. My great-grandfather had a lot of it. In fact, I saw right before I filmed this video, I said hello to my corporate social responsibility professor. I wanted to tell him about this story, but I was like, it would be too long of a thing, and I can tell he's going to his next class, so didn't want to hold him up. But I might send this to him. Why not? So he essentially booted my great-grandfather from the company. And my great-grandfather didn't really care, but it ruined relationships with his brother. Because my great-grandfather's brother was very money-driven, very money-oriented, and all credit for my great-grandfather's help in finding this company was stripped. It's like something out of Breaking Bad, except my great-grandfather continued to be a good person after this. He continued to be a great person, as a matter of fact, that everyone on Long Island knew who he was until like late 90s, because he was gone at that point. And to this day, it doesn't sit well with me, specifically because they still haven't shared the story of how this company was actually founded. They just have Jerry's name, but not Perry's. They don't have Perry's name under how the company was founded. And I thought this was an interesting story to share, because nobody else, and not even the fucking company, wants to share this story. So I thought it was an interesting thing to tell, because, now what we say, I guess I have a monopoly on this. No, I'm just kidding. And I'm not, like, slandering the company, obviously. I'm sure they just were writing down the history that they were told. So I'm not looking for any trouble. But I wanted to tell you my version of the story. And I actually have a lot more stories It's kind of what I do is I tell stories a lot to my friends and they hate it, so I need an outlet, I guess. Um, yeah. So essentially after in the 90s, my great grandfather died. I was born around 2000. My mom told me all this. I was always interested in family history and dynamics. Where my roots are very important. I'm Italian and Cuban, Irish as well. And I am very interested in like how that happened. You know, my grandmother was half Cuban. My great grandmother divorced the Cuban guy. Because the Cuban guy was cheated on my great grandmother, and then my great grandmother married Perry. Perry was a good man. I don't know. It's interesting to hear this story from an outsider's perspective. I'd bet, but yeah, I don't know. I just think it's an interesting thing to share with you all. So, yeah, just wanted to share that. I don't really know how to end this video, which is why I'm dragging on. I'm gonna do some homework.